By the 5th day, the line for Oyoh Yoh's eba was longer than the road to the next village. Fathers left their children. Teachers abandoned classrooms. Even the chief's guards dropped their spears just to join the queue. When the Guinness World Record officials arrived with cameras, the crowd roared as if a king had come. And there in the middle stood Oyoh Yoh Adisa, smiling beside his steaming pot, while wives in the back wept, "Our husbands are gone." Before Oyoh Yoh Adisa became a name that broke the internet, he was just another young man in Afari village. He was known for two things only: his loud laugh and his stubborn love for cooking. While other men went to the farm or followed their fathers to herd goods, Oyoh Yoh would sit near the fire, pounding pepper and tomatoes, humming to himself as smoke filled the air. Villagers mocked him, saying, "A man in the kitchen is like a fish climbing a tree." But he did not mind. His hands were quick with spices, and his heart was patient with fire. Deep down, he believed food was more than just filling bellies. It was a way to bind people together. One evening, when the village square was buzzing with a wrestling contest, Oyoh Yoh brought a small bowl of eba and stew for the wrestlers. They tasted it between matches, and the crowd fell silent. The men who had been throwing each other in the sand now closed their eyes as they chewed, their faces softening with pleasure. "Hey, whose stew is this?" one cried. When Oyoh Yoh stepped forward, holding the pot with both hands, the crowd burst into laughter. "So it is the kitchen boy," they shouted. But still they asked for more, and soon even the chief took notice. That night was the first spark, though no one knew a fire was about to spread far beyond Afari. Word of Oyoh Yoh's cooking grew quickly. At first, it was only the wrestlers who came to him, asking for food after practice. Then the hunters arrived, saying his stew gave them sharper eyes in the forest. Soon, even mothers who could cook for themselves began sneaking to his buka, whispering, "Please, just a small plate for me." His pot never seemed to rest. He stirred in the morning, stirred at noon, and stirred at night, smiling all the while. What made it different, nobody could explain. Some said it was the way he ground his spices with both hands. Some swore he had a secret ingredient hidden in the pocket of his wrapper. Whatever it was, Afari had never tasted food like this. But with fame came envy. Older cooks in the marketplace scowled at him, saying he had stolen their customers. "A man cannot stand in the kitchen and expect to outcook his mothers," one of them barked. They tried to mock him, but their stores grew empty, while his filled with lines. One day, a jealous woman stood at his stall and shouted, "He must be using charms. No food tastes this good without juju." The crowd gasped, but Oyoh Yoh only laughed. "If it is charm, then let us call it the charm of pepper and the magic of patience." His answer made the crowd cheer, and his pot continued to empty faster than he could fill it. The first video came by accident. A young boy named Kojo, always glued to his phone, filmed himself eating Oyoh Yoh's stew. He exaggerated the taste, rolling on the ground, crying fake tears, shouting, "This is the best stew in the world." He posted it online, and within hours, it began to spread. People laughed at Kojo's performance, but more importantly, they asked, "Where can we find this Oyoh Yoh?" By the next week, strangers from other villages started arriving at Afari, phones in hand, cameras ready to taste and record. The old market women shook their heads. "The world has gone mad," they muttered, "just for one man's food." The madness only grew. Videos showed men forgetting to go to work because they stood in line for Oyoh Yoh's eba. Clips of women fighting for the last spoon went viral. One man proposed marriage to Oyoh Yoh's pot, kneeling in front of it while the crowd cheered. Each video made the stew more famous, and Oyoh Yoh himself became a star. He laughed and welcomed the cameras, never too proud to share his secret. "It is simple," he would say. "Good palm oil, fresh pepper, and love in the fire." But love was not enough to explain what was happening. Something bigger than cooking had started. A storm carried by the internet. Soon, buses and cars lined the roads to Afari. People traveled from the city, leaving behind tall buildings and busy offices just to taste Oyoh Yoh's stew. News reporters arrived with microphones, asking him questions he barely understood. "How does it feel to be trending worldwide?" one asked. Oyoh Yoh scratched his head. "I don't know what trend is. I only know pepper, onions, and firewood." The reporters laughed, but their broadcasts only pulled more people to Afari. The small town grew noisy with honking horns, street vendors, and shouting tourists. The once quiet village became a carnival, and at the center of it all was a man with a pot. But the joy carried shadows. Families began to complain that their fathers no longer came home early. Children said their mothers left them alone, standing in lines all day just to bring back Oyoh Yoh's eba. Teachers closed schools because no one showed up. Even the chief himself postponed meetings, saying, "Let me first eat." The women gathered one evening and said, "This stew is no longer food, it has become a sickness." But when they tried to stop the men laughed. "Don't you want us happy?" they asked, and went right back to the queue. The stew was winning, and nobody knew how to fight it. It was then that Guinness officials stepped into Afari, wearing suits and carrying clipboards. They were used to measuring tall buildings, longest braids, fastest drummers, but never in their lives had they seen a food queue stretch so far. From Afari village, it twisted down the road, across a river, and into the next town. They could hardly believe their eyes. "This may be the longest food queue in history," one said, shaking his head. Cameras rolled, capturing people singing, dancing, and fighting for Oyoh Yoh's eba. On the internet, the clips exploded, spreading faster than fire in Harmattan. That day, Oyoh Yoh Adisia stood proudly by his pot as the Guinness man raised a golden plaque and announced, "This is the world record, the most people ever waiting for food." The crowd roared so loudly that goats fled and birds rose into the sky. Oyoh Yoh smiled, his name sealed in history. But in the corner of the crowd, women wept silently. A record had been broken, yes, but so had their families, their peace, and their homes. What no one yet knew was that fame carried a weight heavier than any pot.
Not long after Guinness crowned Oyoh Yoh with the world record, a black car rolled into Afari with tinted windows. Out stepped Honorable Kweku Danso, the politician known for promising everything but delivering nothing. He looked at the long food line, rubbed his hands together and grinned. "This is not just stew," he whispered to his aides. "This is power." The next morning, banners went up. "Vote for Danso, more stew for all." His campaign bus blasted music as young men waved bowls of eba in the air. The queue that had once been about hunger now turned into a political rally. Oyoh Yoh shook his head, confused. Since when did pepper and palm oil become politics? But his name was already stamped on Danso's posters. Soon, Danso began giving out tokens that guaranteed a front spot in the stew line, only if you promised to vote for him. Power men sold their goats to buy the tokens. Women begged him to return their husbands. "Ah, sister," Danso laughed, patting one on the back. "Let him eat, let him be happy. After the election, stew will be free for everyone." The lies spread faster than the internet videos, and Oyoh Yoh found himself trapped. If he rejected Danso, people accused him of being ungrateful. If he stayed quiet, they said he was the politician's puppet. The kitchen fire no longer felt warm, it felt dangerous. The line outside Oyoh Yoh's buka became a battlefield. Supporters of Danso wore red caps, chanting, "One nation, one stew," while those who opposed him shouted, "Our stew, not your votes." The air was thick with insults, drums and pepper smoke. Sometimes, fights broke out right at the door of the buka, bowls flying, soup spilling, men rolling in the dust. Oyoh Yoh tried to stop them, waving his wooden spoon like a peace flag. "Brothers, this is food, not war," he cried, but no one listened. For the first time, he began to fear his own pot. One evening, a group of angry mothers stormed into his kitchen. "Oyoh Yoh," they shouted, banging pots against the wall. "Return our families to us. Your stew has turned our homes upside down." He tried to explain, "It is not me, it is Danso." But they didn't believe him. In their eyes, he was the one feeding the madness. They demanded he close the buka for 1 week. But when word reached Danso, he sent guards to protect the kitchen, declaring, "This stew is a national treasure. It cannot stop until I win the election." Oyoh Yoh's heart grew heavy. His dream of binding people with food was now tearing them apart. As election day drew near, Danso escalated his game. He stood beside Oyoh Yoh's pot, giving speeches as a crowd clapped between mouthfuls of stew. "This man is the future of our nation," he declared, pointing at Oyoh Yoh. "As long as I am in power, his stew will never dry." cameras flashed and Oyoh Yoh's confused face appeared on campaign posters across the country. He wanted to shout, "I am no politician," but every word he spoke was twisted by Danso's men. To the internet, Oyoh Yoh was no longer just a cook. He was a symbol of prosperity, a campaign promise with palm oil dripping down its side. But in the quiet corners of Afari, anger brewed. Farmers complained that no one bought their crops anymore because everyone only wanted Oyoh Yoh stew. Teachers grumbled that schools were empty. Fishermen said their nets lay idle. The village economy was collapsing under the weight of one pot. When Oyoh Yoh realized this, he felt shame. "I never asked for this," he whispered into the fire. Yet he could not stop cooking. If he refused, the hungry mob outside might burn his buka to the ground. He was no longer master of his pot. The pot was master of him.
The women of Afari decided they had seen enough. On a moonless night, they gathered in the chief's courtyard, carrying lanterns and broken spoons. Their leader, an elderly widow named Mame Fua, spoke with fire in her voice. "These two are stealing our children's fathers, our fields, our peace. And the elders do nothing because Danso bribes them with free bowls." The women clapped and ululated in agreement. They swore to rise not with knives or spears, but with hunger strikes and protest songs. The next morning, they stood outside the buka, blocking the entrance. "No stew until peace returns," they sang, voices shaking the ground. The men grew restless, their eyes desperate for pepper and spice. Danso's guards tried to push through the women, but the mothers stood firm. Oyoh Yoh came out begging for calm. "Please, sisters, this stew was never meant to divide us." But Mame Fua looked him in the eye and said, "Then close your pot, Oyoh Yoh, before it cooks us all." Her words pierced him deeper than any insult. For the first time, he wondered if the pot had become cursed, not by magic, but by greed and desire. On election day, the madness reached its peak. Danso supporters paraded bowls of stew through the streets, chanting his name. His opponents shouted louder, accusing him of turning food into chains. The queue outside Oyoh Yoh's buka twisted like a serpent, louder than the polling stations themselves. Some men forgot to vote altogether, their eyes fixed only on the steaming blades. Guinness reporters returned, filming the chaos. "This is no longer just a world record," one muttered. "This is history on fire." In the evening, as results trickled in, Danso declared victory, even before the ballots were counted. He had the people have chosen stew, he boasted. But then something no one expected happened. Oyoh Yoh, standing beside the pot, dropped his spoon. "Enough," he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise like thunder. "I will not cook another plate. This stew has destroyed more than it has fed. Let it end tonight." The crowd gasped. The pot, the record, the fame, all balanced on the edge of one man's decision. And with that, silence fell on Afari for the first time in months. When Oyoh Yoh laid down his spoon, silence swallowed Afari. The crowd shifted uneasily, unsure whether to cheer or riot. Danso forced a laugh, clapping Oyoh Yoh on the back. "Don't mind him, my people. He's only tired. Tomorrow the pot will boil again." But the smile cracked when Oyoh Yoh walked away, leaving the pot unattended. For the first time, the stew line dissolved. Men scratched their heads, blinking as if waking from a dream. Wives rushed forward, tugging them home. Danso barked at his aides, "Bring him back, we need that pot for victory." But the man they needed had vanished into the night. Without the stew, Danso's magic of control began to fade, and whispers of his corruption grew louder. In the following days, reporters who had come to film the world's longest queue stumbled upon something else. They found Danso's campaign accounts swollen with strange deposits, money traced to stolen community funds, bribes from businessmen, even school budgets quietly diverted. Videos leaked online showing Danso eating stew in gold-plated bowls while school children sat hungry in empty classrooms. "He fed himself while our children starved," villagers cried. The internet that had once carried Oyoh Yoh's fame now carried Danso's shame. The crowd that had once cheered his speeches now spat at his posters, tearing them down in rage. The women of Afari, led by Mame Efua, became the loudest voices. They marched through the town, waving empty bowls painted black, chanting, "We cannot eat lies." Their songs filled the streets, and the videos went viral. Oyoh Yoh, hiding quietly in his small hut, watched from a distance. His heart ached to see how his food, once meant to unite, had been twisted by greed. Yet he also saw something new. The people no longer needed stew to wake up. They were finally hungry, not for food, but for justice. Danso tried to bribe the women with bags of rice and meat, but they only laughed, dumping the gifts in the river. At the palace, the elders grew restless. They had enjoyed Danso's bribes, but now the crowd turned against them too. "Why did you allow him to use Oyoh Yoh's pot as his tool?" the people shouted. The elders stammered excuses, claiming ignorance, but the truth was clear, and no excuse could hide it. The palace gates were shut, elders trapped inside, while outside, drums of anger beat louder each night. Afari had tasted fame, but now it hungered for justice. Danso grew desperate. One evening, he returned to Oyoh Yoh's hut, flanked by guards. He banged on the door, shouting, "Open up, kitchen boy! Cook for me one last time. With your stew, I can silence these fools." Oyoh Yoh opened the door slowly, looking Danso straight in the eye. "My stew does not belong to thieves," he said firmly. The guards reached for him, but the villagers, already gathering outside, surged forward. For the first time, the people shielded Oyoh Yoh. They pushed back the guards with sticks and stones, forcing Danso to retreat. Humiliated, he stumbled into the night, his fine clothes torn, his golden shoes coated in dust. The internet erupted again, but this time not with Oyoh Yoh's stew videos. Clips of Danso fleeing the angry crowd spread like wildfire, turning him into a global joke. Hashtags mocked him, hashtag stew of shame, and chop and fall. Memes showed him swimming in stew pots, drowning under tomatoes and pepper. His campaign collapsed overnight, investors pooled their money, and even his closest allies abandoned him. Afari had seen many greedy men before, but none had fallen this hard, this fast. As Danso's empire crumbled, investigators dug deeper. They uncovered warehouses stacked with stolen goods, sacks of rice meant for schools, cooking oil meant for hospitals, even textbooks hidden behind crates of imported wine. Each discovery fueled the anger of the people. "He starved us while he filled his stomach," they shouted. Guinness officials, who had come only to record stew history, now turned their cameras on the unfolding scandal. The world watched as Afari became not just the village of the record-breaking stew, but also the village that exposed a greedy politician. Danso tried one last trick. He went on television, weeping fake tears, claiming, "I only wanted to make the people happy with stew." But nobody believed him anymore. Mothers spat at the screen, fathers shook their heads, children threw slippers at the TV. His lies could not survive in a world where every phone was a witness, every video a testimony. His downfall was sealed, not by guns or courts, but by the collective hunger of people who finally refused to eat lies. One dawn, as the Hamatan winds blew dust across Afari, Danso was seen leaving the town in a small, battered car. No convoy, no guards, no music. Just one man shrinking into the horizon. The once powerful politician who promised stew for all, left with nothing, not even a bowl to his name. The villagers celebrated his exit with dancing and drumming. "The pot of lies has cracked," they sang. The elders, shamed and exposed, begged forgiveness, offering to step down from their seats. For the first time in months, Afari felt peace return, though its streets still smelled faintly of pepper and smoke. Oyoh Yoh, however, did not join the celebrations. He sat by his empty pot, thinking deeply. He had won fame, broken records, and seen politicians fall, but he also knew how quickly joy could turn into madness. Food should bring life, not chains, he whispered to himself. He promised never again to let his pot be used for greed. The internet moved on, as it always did, but Afare kept the story alive, retelling it like a folktale with a warning. Beware of leaders who season their lies with stew.